And then she began looking about and noticed what could be seen from the old room was quite common and uninteresting, but that all the rest was different as possible. For instance, the pictures on the wall next to the fire seemed to be all alive, and the very clock on the chimney piece, you can only see the back of it in the looking glass, had got the face of a little old man and grinned at her. They don't keep this room so tidy as the other, Alice thought to herself as she noticed several of the chessmen down in the hearth among the cinders. But in another moment, with a little "oh" of surprise, she was down on her hands and knees watching them. The chessmen were walking about, two and two. "Here are the Red Queen and the Red King," Alice said in a whisper for the fear of frightening them. "And there are the White King and the White Queen, sitting on the edge of the shovel. And here are two castles walking arm in arm. I don't think they can hear me," she went on as she put her head closer down, "and I'm nearly sure they can't see me. I feel somehow as if I were invisible." Here something began squeaking on the table behind Alice and made her turn her head just in time to see one of the white pawns roll over and begin kicking. She watched it with great curiosity to see what would happen next. "It is the voice of my child!" the White Queen cried as she rushed out past the king, so violently that she knocked him over among the cinders. "My precious Lily! My imperial kitten!" And she began scrambling wildly up the side to fender. "Imperial fiddlestick!" said the king, rubbing his nose, which had been badly hurt by the fall. He had the right to be a little annoyed with the queen, for he was covered with ashes from head to foot. Alice was very anxious to be of use, and as the poor little Lily was nearly screaming herself into a fit, she hastily picked up the queen and set her on the table by the side of her noisy little daughter. The queen gasped and sat down. The rapid journey through the air had quite taken away her breath for a minute or two. She could not do anything but hug the little Lily in silence. As soon as she had recovered her breath a little, she called out to the White King, who was sitting sulkily among the ashes, "Mind the volcano!" "What volcano?" said the king, looking up anxiously into the fire, as if he thought that was the most likely place to find one. Oh my god. "Blew me up," the queen panted, who was still out of breath. "Mind you come up the regular way. Don't get blown up." Alice watched the White King as he slowly struggled up from the bar to bar, till the last she said, "Why, you'll be all hours and hours getting to the table at this rate. I'd far better help you, hadn't I?" But the king took no notice of the question. It was quite clear that he could neither hear her nor see her. So Alice picked him up very gently and lifted him across more slowly than she lifted the queen, that she might have taken his breath away. But before she put him on the table, she thought she might as well dust him off a little. He was so covered with ashes. She said afterwards that she had never seen in her life such a face as the king made. When he found himself held in the air by an invisible hand and being dusted, he was far too astonished to cry out, but his eyes and his mouth went on getting larger and larger and rounder, till her hands shook so with laughing that she nearly let him drop upon the floor. "Oh, please, don't make such faces, my dear," she cried out, quite forgetting that the king couldn't hear. "You make me laugh so that I can hardly hold you. And don't you keep your mouth so wide open. All the ashes will get into there. Now, I think you're tidy enough," she added as she smoothed his hair and set him upon the table near the Queen. The King immediately fell flat on his back and lay perfectly still, and Alice was a little alarmed at what she had done, and went round the room to see if she could find any water to throw over him. However, she could find nothing but a bottle of ink, and when she got back with it, she found he had recovered, and he and the Queen were talking together in a frightening whisper, so low that Alice could hardly hear what they said. The King was saying, "I assure you, my dear, I turned cold to the very ends of my whiskers." To which the Queen replied, "You haven't got any whiskers." "The horror of the moment," the King went on. "I shall never, never forget it." "You will, though," the Queen said, "if you don't make a memorandum of it." Alice looked on with great interest as the King took an enormous memorandum book out of his pocket and began writing. A sudden thought struck her, and she took hold of the end of the pencil, which came some way over his shoulder, and began writing for him. The poor King looked puzzled and unhappy, and struggled with the pencil for some time without saying anything. But Alice was too strong for him, and at last he panted out, "My dear, I really must get a thinner pencil. I can't manage this one a bit. It writes all manner of things that I don't intend." "What manner of things?" said the Queen, looking over the book, in which Alice had put, "The White Knight is sliding down the poker. He balances very badly." "That's not a memorandum of your feelings." There was a book lying near Alice on the table, and while she sat watching the White King, for she was still a little anxious about him, and had the ink all ready to throw over him in case he fainted again, she turned over the leaves to find some part of what she could read. "For it's all some language I don't know," she said to herself. It was like this: "Ye cow rebaj, sivat yitils et dina gilurb sat iba et ni elmig dine erig did sevor gorab et ereb isium illa emargito chitar imam et dina." She puzzled over this for some time, but at last bright thought struck her. "Why, it's a looking-glass book, of course. And if I hold it up to the looking-glass, the words will all go the right way again." This was what the poem Alice read said: Jabberwocky. "'Twas brilling, and the slithy tobes did gyre and gimble in the wob. All mimsy where the borogobes and the mome rats outgrob. Beware the Jabberwocky, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jujubur and the shun, and the fruminous bandersnatch." He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the maximomy foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum-gree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tugly wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through The vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went glumping back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my blemish boy, my beamish boy. O Frabjous Calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brilling, and the silly toads did gyre and gimble in the wob. O mimsy, where the boragobes and the mome rats outgrob. It seems very pretty, she said when she had finally finished it, but it's rather hard to understand. You see, she didn't like to confess ever to herself that she couldn't make it out at all. Somehow, it seems to fill my head with ideas. Only, I don't exactly know what they are. However, somebody killed something. That's clear, at any rate. But oh, thought Alice, suddenly jumping up, if I don't make haste, I shall have to go back through the looking-glass before I've seen what the rest of the house is like. Let's have a look at the garden first. She was out of the room in a moment and ran down the stairs, or at least it wasn't exactly running, but a new invention of hers for getting downstairs quickly and easily, as Alice said to herself. She just kept the tips of her fingers on the handrail and floated down gently without ever touching the stairs with her feet. Then she floated on through the hall and would have gone straight out the door in the same way if she hadn't caught hold of the doorpost. She was getting a little giddy with so much floating in the air, and was rather glad to find herself walking again in the natural way. Okay, everyone, so that was chapter 1. I'm sorry I didn't read it so well, but if you guys listened to the whole thing, thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed it, even though, yeah, so, I'll try to do chapter 2 tomorrow, if after school I feel good enough. I'm kind of sick if you hadn't noticed, so, so if you want to stay tuned for chapter 2, just, look for it tomorrow, or when I get it out. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye-bye.